Hi, this is Raphael Mudge, the creator of Cobalt Strike. Welcome to Part 4 of Advanced Threat Tactics, Post-Exploitation. So far, we've worked to stand up our infrastructure and get a foothold in a modern enterprise environment. Now, we're going to continue that by conducting post-exploitation on the systems we've compromised so far. We're going to talk about how to manage and use Cobalt Strike's beacon payload. I'm going to show you how to pass sessions with beacon. We'll talk about file system browsing and manipulation with beacon. So that's basically how to download and upload files. We'll talk about user exploitation, logging keystrokes, and taking screenshots. I will also take you through browser pivoting, which is a very unique Cobalt Strike only technique. And we'll talk about port scanning as well. So how do you interact with beacon? Well, right-click on a beacon session, go to Interact, and this will open the beacon console. In the beacon console, you can see when the beacon last checked in, the user the beacon is running as, the process ID, and the computer name as well. The beacon console will also show you the commands issued by your teammates and output from their commands. Any commands issued by somebody else other than you will show up with their name before the command. Now, when you interact with the beacon, you can right-click in the beacon console or on the beacon session and choose one of these menus, okay? The access menu are options to manipulate trust relationships and elevate your privileges. The Explore menu are options to control the target and spy on the user. The Pivoting menu are options to tunnel traffic through this beacon. And the Session menu are options to manage this particular session. One of the most important commands in beacon, because I cannot cover all of them in this video, is help. Type help to get a list of the commands in beacon, and to get help for a particular command, just type help in the command name. This information is always up to date with the latest things that you can do with the beacon payload. Something else you're going to want to know how to do. You're going to want to know how to change the sleep time for your beacon. You can do that with the sleep command. Type sleep 30 to make the beacon sleep for 30 seconds in between attempts to call home. You can also specify a jitter factor. Just do sleep 60, 50 in this case, and that will set the sleep time to 60 seconds with a 50% randomization, meaning the beacon's going to call home between 30 and 60 seconds each time. To run a command in the Windows command shell and get output, type shell and whatever command and arguments you want to run. This will tell beacon to spawn a command shell, run what you asked, and provide the output back to you. Now, the shell command will always run from the current working directory of the beacon, okay? If you want to change that working directory, do not do shell cd some folder, because that will spawn a new process, change its directory, and close it down. Instead, use beacon's cd command. Just do cd in whatever folder you want to go to. Okay? Now, if you want to check which directory is the current working directory for beacon, just do pwd, which is print working directory, and when beacon checks in next, it'll tell you which folder it's currently operating from. You can also use PowerShell through beacon, okay? First, you can just do PowerShell, whatever commandlet and arguments you want, and beacon will run PowerShell, run what you asked, and report the output back to you, okay? Now, if you have a favorite offensive PowerShell script, you can use it with beacon as well. Just do PowerShell-import and give beacon the local path on your system to that PowerShell script. Cobalt Strike will import that script into memory inside of that beacon. Now, future runs of the PowerShell command can reference commandlets in that imported script. This allows you to seamlessly take advantage of different offensive PowerShell capability that's available in the open source world, plus your own custom stuff. Now, when you're using PowerShell, if you want to get help for a commandlet, do PowerShell get help, the commandlet, followed by -full. Most PowerShell commandlets are documented in such a way to work with this convention, and this will give you back information on how to use that particular PowerShell commandlet. Okay, let's take a look at basic beacon management. Here we are in Cobalt Strike, and I have several systems calling back, okay? About 6. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these, right-click, go to Interact. This is the beacon console, okay? We can see when the beacon last checked in, the process ID, the username we're running as, and the computer's NetBIOS name. Same information available up here, okay? Cool. If you right-click in the console or right-click on a beacon, this is the beacon menu. So here in the Access menu, these are our options to establish trust relationships and elevate our privileges. These are options to explore the system, options for tunneling, session passing, and controlling our access. What I'm going to do right now is tell all of these beacons to sleep for something other than 60 seconds. I'm going to put all of them for now on a 5-second interval. Okay? So I've just tasked all of these beacons en masse. And this one is going to check in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, check in. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at some basic things. First, the help command in beacon is your best friend. This command lists all the different things you can do with a beacon. It's an ever-growing list. And you can type help and a command name to get help for that specific command. Now let's do some beacon basics. PWD will print the current working directory and tell you where you're at. If you want to change the directory in beacon, just put in the folder you want to go to, and then you can do things from that folder. Like if I do shell space dir, this will actually produce a directory listing from the Windows command shell in this folder. Okay? As easy as that. Next thing I'd like to show you is PowerShell. You can use beacon to run PowerShell strings if you want, or PowerShell commandlets. So here, PowerShell 2 plus 2 gives us back the value of 4. Okay? So you can use PowerShell through beacon just as if you were sitting on that computer as well. Now, let's talk about session passing. Beacon was originally designed as a low and slow placeholder to spawn Meterpreter sessions as needed. It wasn't meant to be a post-exploitation agent. But one thing Beacon was always good at from day one was session passing. If you right-click on a beacon and go to spawn, you can choose a listener from any of the team servers you're connected to and task Beacon to create a process and inject the stager for that particular listener into that process. And that is how you pass sessions with Beacon. You can also inject a listener into a specific process. Just do inject, the process ID, and the listener name. Okay? And session passing works with both beacons on other team servers and foreign listeners as well. Let's take a look at session passing with Cobalt Strike. Session passing is easy when you're connected to multiple team servers. Let's go to our localhost team server and create a listener for an HTTP beacon on port 80. Okay? Now, let's pass an access to this team server. Just come over here to the server with all the accesses, go right-click, spawn, choose the listener you want to pass an access to. You'll notice when you're connected to multiple team servers, Cobalt Strike pools the listeners from all of your servers. Press choose, and as those beacons check in, new accesses will show up over here. Okay? So that's session passing with Cobalt Strike. Now, let's say you want to pass a session to a friend using the Metasploit framework. You can do that. Let's come over here and let's open up a terminal and start the Metasploit framework console. Okay? And what we're going to do is create a handler for the Meterpreter payload. So let's do set payload, Windows Meterpreter, reverse HTTPS. Let's set L port to 443 and L host to 192.168.1.2. And let's go ahead and kick that off. Cool. We now have an HTTPS Meterpreter handler running on this host. Let's pass some accesses to the Metasploit framework. First, we need to create a foreign listener. So let's go press add. And we're going to call this Rafi's Meterp HTTPS. And we're going to use a foreign listener, which is an alias, basically. We're going to point that to 192.168.1.2.443. Cool. Press save, and we now have a foreign listener. Now, let's go ahead and pass some accesses to the Metasploit framework. Okay? So let's go ahead and pass right-click spawn, and we'll pass our What a Hog on this Windows 10 system over. And when this beacon checks in next, we get a Meterpreter session. Okay, let's talk about working with the file system through Beacon. One way to do that is through the file browser. If you right-click on a beacon, go to Explore, Browse Files, you'll get a file browser very similar to the one in Armitage. Now, the file browser will allow you to navigate through folders, upload files, list drives, download files, and delete files as well. One thing I want to point out, each time you do something in the file browser, it will create a task for the beacon to execute. If the beacon is calling back low and slow, the file browser will not act on what you've asked until the beacon checks in. It simply can't. It's impossible. So it's best to use the file browser with a beacon that's sped up to be interactive or have an otherwise very low sleep time. Beacon does some really interesting things when it comes to file downloads. You can use the file browser to tell Beacon to download a file, or you can use the download command to request that a file is downloaded as well. Now, Beacon does not exfiltrate a file in one big chunk. Instead, Beacon is designed to drip a file out of a network. How does it do that? Well, each check-in, Beacon will grab a small piece of all the files that you've asked it to download. So each check-in, it'll download parts of the files. So if Beacon is set up to check in quite often, maybe every 1 to 2 seconds, you'll get the file pretty quickly. If Beacon is set up to sleep for a long time between check-ins, maybe once every minute, minute and a half, or every hour, you will get the file out very, very slowly. The nice thing, though, is you can tailor exfiltration to whatever the needs of your environment are. If you want to cancel a file download, you can do that with the cancel command. And the cancel command accepts wildcards as well. So you can do cancel star to tell Beacon to cancel all in-progress downloads. If you want to see which downloads are in progress, type downloads in the Beacon console, and you will get a list of the downloads that are currently in progress and where they are at in their journey. Now, files are downloaded to the team server, okay? To access those files, go to View, Downloads. Downloads that are complete will list in this tab. And all you have to do is highlight the file you want to interact with and press Sync Files. Cobalt Strike will then ask you for a local folder to dump those files to, and it will download those files from the team server and put them on your local system for your enjoyment. Use the upload command to upload a file through Beacon. Okay. When you upload a file, Beacon will keep track of the MD5 hash of the file and make that available in its reporting. It will also note the MD5 hash of that file in its logs. Now, if you need to, you can use the timestamp command to change the timestamps of the file you uploaded. Just do timestamp, the file you want to update, and the file that you want to pull timestamp information from. This is a great way to make any persistence you install blend in. Okay, let's take a look at file exfiltration with Cobalt Strike. I'm going to interact with a beacon for Jim Stevens, and I'm going to put this beacon on a 5-second sleep interval. Now let's go to Explore, File Browser, and this is Beacon's file browser. Let's ask it to go up a folder. Now each command I give it is only going to take effect once the beacon checks in. Okay? So if you have a high sleep time, you're going to have to be pretty patient with the file browser. Double click the users folder. Let's go to Jim Stevens. There we go. And let's go to Documents. And I see a file that looks interesting to me. Transactions.csv. Let's go ahead and right click and ask Beacon to download it. When Beacon downloads files, it downloads them one chunk per check-in, okay? So you can ask Beacon to check in more often and get the file faster, or you can keep Beacon on a low and slow interval, and it will pull the file out very, very slowly. So here, we're downloading this transactions file. Now, if you want to know the progress of the download, just type downloads, and there we go. We can see we've grabbed about 2 megabytes of it so far. Let's go ahead and speed this up to a 1-second interval. And now we should grab the file a little bit faster. And so we should be getting about 0.5 megabyte per transaction. If we want to check the status, we can see we're there. We've now grabbed the transactions.csv file from this host. The file is stored on the team server. If you want to grab it, go to View, Downloads, okay? And to bring that file to your local system, just highlight it, press Sync Files, and tell Cobalt Strike where to store it. And there's the file being downloaded from the team server to our local file system. Okay? So that's an example of exfiltrating data with Cobalt Strike.